So, Mitch, I wanted to say thank you for coming on tonight.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate you coming on. Obviously, in a different world, we'd be doing it live together. We'd be in a room together doing this, but just not the way it worked out, eh? Um, but I'm really excited to hear your story because I've never heard it in full before. Um, so, yeah, you take it away and you can tell us your story however you like, sir.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so my name is Mitch. I work for the Alberta Seven Step Society, which is a not-for-profit organization working within the criminal justice system. So I speak to kids, high schools, junior highs, and daily about rights, resources, and choices, right? So my criminal lifestyle started at a young age, which led into addiction, right?
Mhm.
Like I was an addict before it even started using drugs in any way, right? Like I was always distant from everything going on around me. Like, so my dad has a severe addiction. Yeah, he's in recovery now. I think at a young age, my first memory, well, my first couple of memories were witnessing him pretty drunk, right?
Mm. Yeah.
I remember him almost dying at my house in Dole Zarmo. Luckily, my sister snapped him out of it, right? But he was resuscitated. But that was
Wow.
the last time I saw him for quite a few years.
Yeah.
My dad moved to Calgary, and me and my mom and sister moved to Toronto. We lived in Deacon Lane housing. But I didn't have much compared to the other kids. I felt less than. I started to steal, change price tags on things I wanted. You know, like at about 8 years old was when like my criminal lifestyle started.
Mhm.
So, and that kept going. Just before I turned 13, I was my bar mitzvah. My mom asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" All I really wanted to do was go live with my dad. So luckily, my dad's drinking a lesson, and he was all for it. My mom said yes. I don't think she really wanted to. So I moved to Calgary to live with my dad. And I remember when I moved to Calgary, things were good. I was playing sports a lot. Things were a lot different. I made some unhealthy friends. And I remember one said to me, "Do you want to smoke a joint?"
Mm.
I was like, "Yeah." And I remember it felt like I finally found what I've been looking for. Like everything about it. It was not going well. It was my escape from reality, right? And then I chased and chased and chased. I got more involved in criminal lifestyle. Things got worse and worse and worse until eventually, after my first time in prison, I went to ARC, Alberta Adolescent Recovery Center. I signed myself in there. I learned everything for recovery. I just wasn't willing to work it, right? So I graduated from drug treatment. My mom and my grandma came there for the graduation from Ontario. Things were looking pretty good.
Mhm.
I'm lucky because I was also pushing the lines in treatment, being very dishonest on occasions, and I almost got terminated. But I was let go for a month and got brought back, right?
Mhm.
Then after my graduation, I was living with a graduate family at first, but I started to smoke crack again.
Mhm.
And that ended up being my drug of choice, which I found in grade 12. Just after grade 12, I started to use my crack with my father,
Mhm.
uh, which is part of the disease, right? My dad's addiction was pretty severe at that point in time, right? So just before graduation, I started to smoke crack with my dad. So what I'm going to say is I was expelled from 3 high schools, uh, criminal activity, right? And I found my drug of choice, so I went through ARC. Just after ARC was after my first time in prison. I went to Lethbridge once I turned 19. I was in there for about 5 months, and then I went to ARC after.
Mhm.
After ARC, I graduated, but like I said, I did everything they wanted. I didn't really want to do it for me. I still wanted to smoke weed and drink. That was my thought, right? So I went back to my dad's, started smoking crack again pretty quick, right? And then my dad was accepted for a liver transplant. His liver was going to be replaced, so that was a big surgery.
Mhm.
Uh, the last thing I did with my dad before he left was let him go to crack for him. I wasn't really concerned about that.
Mhm.
He left. I stole a bunch of money from his company. I was still smoking crack. I began smoking heroin. Uh, Things got pretty bad. Eventually, might have returned. I stole the money from him, and he kicked me out. And things got worse and worse. Right, I went on my own. I started breaking the law more. I got my first federal sentence. I did that. Got out. Went back to a halfway house. It was years of being clean. Relapsed again. Violated my parole. Went back to remand. Given a chance. I went again. Screwed up. Broke the law. Then I went back to. Then I ended up going to Drumheller.
Mhm.
That's Things got pretty bad. I got involved with more severe criminals for sure, right? Serious habitual offenders, and things got pretty dark. My addiction had taken over big time, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I completed my jail sentence in Drum. Well, I got out, relapsed, went back, got out, and then I'm done, right?
Mhm.
And then I was still doing crime regularly, uh, breaking the law, doing drugs heavily, mostly just crack cocaine and drinking, right? Uh, I ended up being convicted again. I went
Mhm.
back to Lethbridge, which was my mother provincial prison for my first time. I went to jail. It was a gang jail at this point. Did my time, got out. Then I said I'm not going back go back to jail. So I began robbing people at gunpoint, drug dealers, thinking this was a good idea. So my criminal lifestyle was pretty severe, right? Like I went from banks to robbing dealers to high speed chases, you name it. Nothing about it was okay. I was living on the verge of death.
Mhm.
Everything I did, right? So I ended up being convicted. I did my time. I got out. Then I started to rob drug dealers at gunpoint. Uh, after I did that for a while, I ended up robbing a guy I was in Drum with. I was a high-ranking member of the same gang that I was affiliated with. Uh, and he was on crack. He was a convicted killer. I robbed him. Uh, and he shot at me and my friends. He and my friend in the back. There was blood everywhere. I got away. Eventually, I was arrested. I went back to remand, where I didn't think things would be bad. I tried to commit police induced suicide at first. That didn't work out. Then I went back to remand, where I was on one safe unit I can go to, the gang unit that I was affiliated with. I went in there, thinking I could talk my way out of it. I was almost murdered. Uh, I went to Foothills Hospital. I was in a coma for 3 months,
Wow.
wheelchair for 2 years. I learned how to walk, talk, write, everything again, right?
Wow,
Which was
man.
pretty bad. Yeah.
That's
And
intense. So 2 years you were in a wheelchair.
yes,
Wow, man.
yeah, but I still didn't learn, right?
Mhm.
Like, I didn't realize it was my addiction, that it did all of everything to me, right? I
Yeah.
thought it was just, if I would have just went right instead of left, things would have went differently, right?
Mhm.
I went back. I moved to Ontario after I went to Panoka, like it's a Braintree hospital in Panoka, right? Called the Harvard Johnson. I did there. There's actually the thing from my unit there. I was there for 6 months.
Okay.
After being in coma for 3 months, 6 months in Foothills, and 6 months in Panoka, I graduated. My dad was finally in recovery, so I went to live with my mom in Ontario. Uh, but I didn't realize I could drink or drug. Right, I went with my mom, my grandma one night, had a beer, right back into addiction. I was drinking heavily. I got a joint a little later, smoked it. Very paranoid. I came back to Calgary for a visit. I met Holly, my wife. Uh, Fell in love, but I was using my walker at the time. So after the date, I tried to make drug-induced suicide. So again, I tried to commit suicide by cop. I tried to commit suicide before that many times, right? Again, I tried again. Didn't work out. Grateful for that. Moved back to Ontario. Then I moved back to Calgary. I got a sponsor.
And so
Finally,
so you had met Holly earlier then.
I just before. Okay, so when I came back to Calgary, uh, I was clean sober,
Mhm.
right? For almost at that point in time, quite a while.
Okay.
And after the date, I felt defeated. I
Mhm.
was using my walker, the shame, the self-pity is all it really
Oh,
was, right?
it would have been
I
hard to
tried to
fight
make
that, man.
suicide. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that didn't go well, thankfully. I went
Mhm.
back to Ontario briefly, then I moved back to Calgary, got a sponsor, admitted complete defeat, right?
Mhm.
I started to realize that there was so much out there that could help me, right? Uh, like and when I'm in schools, I talk about these pamphlets that I hand out.
Mhm.
They talk about the kids help phone, 211,
Yeah.
addiction helpline, child abuse helpline, mental health helpline, and bullying helpline, right? All the
Mhm.
different aspects of getting help that are resources are out there. I'm
Yeah.
grateful. I was in AA and CA. I got a
Mhm.
sponsor. I began the steps for my freedom and for my recovery.
Mhm.
I finally started to face the truth about myself. I realized there was a power within me that could restore me back to sanity, right?
Mhm.
Uh, for anybody who does everybody know what that means?
I don't know, man. Yeah, it depends on who's listening, I guess, when they listen, right?
Okay, so the power within myself that could restore me back to sanity.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm not religious,
Yeah.
right? I've been baptized. I got my bar mitzvah. I was
Mhm.
on a kosher diet in federal prison, right? I'm
Okay.
quick to see where religious people are right, right? And
Mhm.
that was the thing. It was admitting that I on my own I needed help, right?
Yeah.
I was finally able to open up and ask for help. At first, I had a struggle with the God idea,
Mhm.
big time, right? Like I thought God was out to get me,
Well,
you
that's a
know.
lot to digest, man, right?
Yeah. Like I thought God was out to get me. Like I
Mhm.
looked at my life, right? And it wasn't until my dad's sponsor told me uh, God didn't rob banks.
Mm.
God didn't stick a needle in his arm.
Mhm.
You made those choices.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, okay, right? And then my wife said to me, you weren't delivering cookies,
Yeah.
which is very true, right?
It's
I
true.
think it was hard to take at first, but then I started to
Mhm.
realize, you know what? I remember people saying to me at first, give it 150%. If it doesn't work out, we'll recover your misery in full.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
well, because then I tried, I tried to keep clean sober. I always went back, right? And it was back to misery, right?
Mhm.
So I finally decided to believe in a power in myself, right? I realized how insane my life was.
Mhm.
I did a personal inventory. I wrote down the good and bad of my life, right? Step 4.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, the good and the bad of my life, right?
Yeah.
The assets and the defects is what I wrote down, right?
Yeah. And how did you find step 4? Like, what did you find about that process? Because I'm assuming that before you did it for the first time, that you didn't have much of an idea about it, right? So, like, how did that affect you?
Well, I knew what it was about. When I went through ARC, I went
Mhm.
through 1835. I went through Simon House, right? I
So you
never
did
went.
have an introduction then. Yeah.
I did, but
Good.
I was never fully willing,
Yeah.
right? Like I did it to the point that I could always walk away,
Mhm.
And this time I finally did it. I wrote down everything,
Okay.
right? I remember I went with my sponsor to Glenmore Reservoir, and we sat down, and he was on his cell phone. Okay,
Mhm.
this is why I laughed, because he was on his cell phone,
Yeah.
and then he put his cell phone down and says, "Go ahead."
Mhm.
And I kept looking at his phone, looking at him talking, and finally I said to him, "Are you recording me?"
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, "Mitch, you're not that important." And that was kind of a smash to the
Mm.
ego right there, right?
Yeah.
That was reality. I thought that I was such a dangerous individual.
Mhm.
Like, and yeah, I did some pretty evil things, right? I'm not gonna
For
lie to you.
sure. Yeah.
I did almost a decade behind bars,
Mhm. That's a big
for
chunk
pretty,
of time.
yeah, a
Yeah.
long time, right?
Yeah.
I lost the ability to cry.
Mhm.
I don't cry. I have a hard time processing emotions,
Yeah.
right? Which is my reality, right? I still struggle. That was the thing with the steps.
Mhm.
This was a big struggle, right? Having to make up the defeat, right?
Mhm.
Step 2, having hope, realizing there's a power within myself that can restore me back to sanity, right?
Mhm.
and finally making the choice to turn my will over to God as I understood Him, right?
Yeah.
Do my step forward, admit complete defeat, and you know what? And do my step 5. You know,
Mhm.
it's a big one. And by actually sharing them with my sponsor after I admitted, I finally realized I wasn't important, right?
Yeah.
And he told me, you need to change everything, you
Mhm.
know? Like, I was a very sick individual. I lived selfish,
Mhm.
inconsiderate, dishonest, self-seeking, right?
Mhm.
And that's how I lived, right? And so after reviewing that in my life, I had to do 6, 7 inventory,
Mhm.
right? After my inventory, shortcomings, defects, right? Look at the good and the bad of my life, right?
Mhm.
And how I acted, right? That was the big thing, right? It's how I reacted to every situation in my life that I
Mhm.
faced. Because I reacted wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I didn't know how to react, right? And you know what they always say, fight or flight, right?
Mhm.
Well, I was fight, and that almost killed me.
Mhm.
You know, so it was at the point now where there was no flight. I had to accept, right?
Yeah.
I had to work through my shortcomings. I had to work through all my defects, right? Which I found was very funny because, like, they were pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Selfish, self-centered, dishonest, and
Mhm.
considerate, right? Hey, you know what? But the thing was, as soon as I worked on one, another one would pop up, right?
Mhm.
And there's hundreds of actual. I have a list in front of me of liabilities, right, and
Mhm.
assets, but they all stem from selfish, self-dishonest, and considerate, right?
Mhm.
They all stem from that. And and I can just go for self-pity, self-justification,
Mhm.
and I always was so selfish, right? I
Mhm.
finally had to start giving back. You know, I did a step 8. I reviewed the good and the bad of my life, right?
Yeah.
I reviewed all the harms I did to people,
Mhm.
right? A lot of them I couldn't do. There were no amends I could make
Yeah.
because a lot of people were dead. You know, a lot of people lost their lives from the lifestyle I was involved in,
Mhm.
right? You know, there's a lot of things I can never take back.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I'm not gonna say that, you know, I was almost murdered many times, right?
Mhm.
Like, thankfully, my mom and sister were so far away. I really only emotionally hurt them, right?
Mhm.
But you know, the suicide attempts, you
Yeah.
know, my drug use was so selfish, right? My dad using drugs with him, right,
Mhm.
was sticking to self, uh, you know, the trauma I experienced as a young man wasn't my fault,
Mhm.
right? But the choice I made as a result was my fault,
Yeah.
right?
And
Like,
that's important to distinguish, right? Like, because at some point in time, no matter what happened to us when we were kids, we then become responsible, right? At a certain point for what we do, right?
yeah, that I need to own that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that
Yeah.
was a big part of it because and that was where my freedom lied,
Hmm.
was by admitting that, right?
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
so I was able to move forward. I did my amends with my dad, with my mom, with my family. You know, a lot of people I couldn't do amends with.
Hmm.
Plus my criminal lifestyle. A lot of people. I know the big book it says do whatever wherever you can.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, I talked to my sponsor, and for me alone, I'm not gonna say for other people.
Yeah.
A lot of people I was involved with, they don't want an amend.
Hmm.
They just want to shoe me.
Well, I mean, I get it, right? Or they just want you to disappear, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and
yeah.
there's a lot more. Like when in step 9 it says, except when it's to do so would harm them or others, right?
Hmm.
Well, I have a wife, I have a son, I have a daughter, I have a
Hmm.
relationship with my mom, my sister, my parent, my mother and father-in-law, my
Hmm.
brother-in-law, you know, my wife. Yeah,
Hmm.
and these are all would all be harmed because all of these amends that I would like to be able to make, a lot of them have just been letters,
Hmm.
living correctly, right? Doing
Yeah.
the next right thing. And like once I was able to go through the steps the first time, I still continue on, right? I
Hmm.
I, I don't think once you're done, it's over. You
Yeah.
know, I know some people think that, fine, it's whatever works for them, right? But for
Yeah. If it's working for them.
Yeah, but for me, I've achieved some amazing things in my life
Hmm.
thanks to the steps I've taken, right?
Yeah.
So why would I stop?
Hmm.
That's the big thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
and like, step 10, promptly, you
Hmm.
know, like living correctly. That's all it really is, right?
Yeah.
You know what? And not being the selfish, self-centered, egocentric person I was, you
Hmm.
know? And yes, I make mistakes. I'm not an angel by any
Yeah.
means, right? I
Well,
still struggle.
you're in recovery, not a saint, right? Like,
No.
yeah.
And then I will say I always hear people in recovery say 90-day inventory. Uh, from what I've read in the big book,
Hmm.
an inventory at the end of night is step 11, right?
Hmm.
Probably is step 10.
Hmm.
So so my step 11, like 86, 87 in the big book, right? On
Yeah.
awakening, we're retire. I like that. I listen to it on YouTube
Hmm.
regularly on my way to work, right?
Yeah.
Uh, every night I do an inventory. I look at the
Right
good
on.
about my life, right?
Hmm.
But I see that's the thing, right? I will say, David, I don't look at just the bad.
Hmm.
I look at the positives.
Well, you want to see a whole picture, right? Not just part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by showing that gratitude for the positives, it makes it
Mhm.
easier to stay in recovery,
Yeah.
and then I just give back what's been so freely given to me.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm very grateful for that, right? Uh, after my first set of steps in 2015, your dad married me and Holly.
Oh, yeah,
Your dad
man.
married me and Holly.
He loved seeing you guys. We bumped into you at that park a while back. Yeah, he just loved seeing you guys, man.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
And life really changed, right? Like when I moved
Yeah.
back from Ontario, while I was doing the steps, at my first, I was almost done step 10.
Hmm.
I went back to university. I
Nice.
went to Mount Royal. I went for addition certificate course.
Hmm.
I completed honors, like
Congrats,
five
man.
A's, 1 A plus. I did
Congrats.
pretty well. I was lucky. I was on AISH. AISH is welfare
Hmm.
for the handicapped because it was
Yeah,
pretty
it's a
severely
shared
handicapped,
income for disability, right?
and I was right. And plus, with my criminal record, there wasn't really looking for a job happening.
Hmm.
Uh, I got married to Holly. Right?
Yeah.
After that, she said, "You looking for a job?" So I applied to 1835 for Recovery Acres.
Hmm.
Got a job. They looked
Right
past my
on.
record. Got
Yeah.
lucky, right? I was a night counselor for over 2 years.
Right
But
on.
due to my limitations, I couldn't move up to days.
Hmm.
I still struggled, right? Then I moved on. I went and worked with high risk youth at John Howard Society,
Right on.
frontline before issue took over, which was amazing.
Hmm.
Uh, I, I'm very grateful for that. Just towards end of that, August 22nd, I had my son Levi.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right? And
Hey.
these are huge changes. These things would have
Yeah.
never happened, right?
So how
Uh,
long have you and Holly been married now? 5 years?
almost 6.
Almost six,
Well,
yeah.
no, over 6 now.
Wow.
Over 6 now. Yeah.
I can't believe how fast time goes, man.
I'm so grateful.
Yeah, that's
So
amazing.
grateful. It's amazing. And that's thanks to the work that I've done and continue doing. Right.
Yeah,
You
there's
know.
no question. You can't replace the work, man. You got to do the work.
Then I got the job I do now. I
Yep.
speak to kids around
Yep.
Alberta about rights, resources, choices, change, addiction. Right.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
so- and so kids realize that you know what, you're not bulletproof for long.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young age thinking how bulletproof I am.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that lifestyle you think is going to be so grandiose
Yeah.
and it's going to go the right way, right, with addiction and criminal lifestyle, right?
Hmm.
And it doesn't. Things get bad quick.
Well,
And
and
I
and
talk
the
to kids.
yeah, and you go around because you go to one of the schools that I talk to as well, about it, which is really cool, man. And the fact that you can talk about it from a perspective of knowing just how unlikely it is to succeed in that lifestyle, right? Like how lucky do you have to be one of the ones that doesn't die from it or spend the rest of their life in jail, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the likelihood of that? It's not very likely, right?
No, there's not a lot of people that could apply for my job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but you know, I remember my sponsor saying, "You'll be amazed, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that the things that are going to happen in your life, right?" And
Yeah.
like even like this job myself,
Mm-hmm.
it's like designed for me.
It's pretty amazing, Mitch.
I and now I go around Alberta.
Yeah.
You know, I last year I did a virtual.
Yeah.
I think since I've in the last 2.5 years, I've spoke to thousands and thousands of kids,
Mm-hmm. Right
hundreds
on,
of
man.
schools. Yeah.
I'm excited that you're doing that because it brings a level. I remember when I was young, I don't know what it was like for you when you were young, but I don't remember ever being talked to about this stuff, like in a real way, like where someone like yourself would come into a classroom and when I was in high school and actually give us the truth about drug addiction, give us the truth about the crime that goes along with drug addiction, right? Because a couple of the, I mean, you'll have friends like this too, obviously, but a couple of my friends, every crime they ever did was drug related, like
Oh yeah.
100%, right? Like, and it was related to their addiction issues
Yeah.
with those drugs, right?
Yeah. It'd be totally right. Like you know, I didn't break the law
Mhm.
to not do drugs.
Yeah,
Right? Like
I mean,
everything involved with drugs, right?
yeah,
And you know, and then I got deeper and deeper into that what do they say, game, right? It's not really a
mhm.
game, but that's what they call it, right?
Well, and yeah, I guess it's a game. There's just no winners, really, right? Like, and I think that's the hard part is that I mean, how do you win at that game? Like, what
Yeah.
does a winning score look like, right?
Well, and it's you know it's funny like the amount of guys that I know have been murdered, you know,
Hmm.
they, you know, a lot of amount of guys I know guys who died in custody. I know
Hmm.
guys in jail for the next 30, 40 years, you know, life.
Hmm. Like,
Uh,
have you thought about it, man? Like, how many of the people do you know still that are alive? Like, have you ever done the math? Like, I
yeah,
know it
so
sounds pretty macabre, but
you know, in the course of a decade, I 20 over 25 friends of mine killed connected to organized crime,
yeah,
right? That they were involved in, right?
yeah,
I was only affiliated, right?
yeah.
Uh, since then, over 50.
Wow.
Yeah, or like killed by police committing crime,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, overdose. The numbers
Hmm.
just get bigger daily, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the overdose numbers are incredible, right? Like,
Overdose it's crazy. Like when I worked at John Howard,
mhm,
I was trying to give naloxone.
yeah.
Naloxone, the opioid reversal, right?
Hmm.
If someone's overdosing on generally fentanyl,
Yeah. Generally
you
down
inject,
of some kind, right?
you inject them with naloxone and hopefully it pulls them out, right?
Hmm.
There were times where I injected a kid with 4,000 milligrams,
Wow.
and he still didn't come to until EMS got there,
Unreal, dude. Say,
and
say
like
that
and
again.
these
How many
young kids,
milligrams?
4,000.
Jesus, dude. Yeah, and you're talking about kids, right? Like,
Oh, and then they're not adults. These are kids, right? Some of them
yeah.
are at the young age of 14.
Oh God, that's awful. Jesus.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
am
why
not
you know,
surprised.
it's unbelievable.
Mhm. Yeah, it really
I
is,
talk
man.
about that when I go daily, right? And I'm
Yeah.
very grateful, right? Like I work at a high risk halfway house, right? Alberta seven
Mhm.
step.
Yeah.
Uh, we're funded by the Bird Law Foundation, so which allows me to speak to kids, right?
Yeah.
I'm grateful because then they actually listen to somebody who's been there.
Oh, 100%, man. I
And maybe
mean,
they'll make those same choices.
yeah.
That's what I hope.
I guarantee that if I had someone like yourself come into a class when I was growing up, Mitch, like things would have been different, I'm sure. Like, just the simple having that hands-on. And now I'm saying this, and I could honestly, maybe I did have someone come in and
Yeah.
talk to me, right? But I think like I would remember that, you know. But I
Then
guess
again,
maybe I wouldn't because I
how
drank a
far,
lot.
how far was the addiction taking over at that point, though?
Well, honestly, it kind of did take over. So
Yeah, exactly, right?
I was pretty out of it. So at that point, yeah, you know what? By the time I was probably 15, I stopped listening. Right?
Not just stop listening. Well, most addiction starts at 15 years old.
Yeah.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is, when we turn ourselves out,
Mm-hmm.
like until I admitted complete defeat, until I was ready to accept I had the problem, I had handfuls of people tell me you have an issue, right?
You have an issue, yeah.
When I was in grade 10, there was a speaker in Wisewood, and I think 10 minutes into it, I left and went to get high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and he was right. I know that the program I work for has been going for 40 years.
Yeah. So chances are pretty good, right? There was somebody.
Yeah. It is, right? And like, I know Germany con class. I know now they have legal studies, right?
Yeah.
I know that it would have been in calm. So but again, like, I know how I was at that age.
Yeah.
And a speaker would have been a good excuse to leave.
You know what, dude? As you're talking about it, I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Chances are pretty good. I was just getting high or drinking, right? Because when I was 15, 16, and 17, drinking was important to me, right? Like it meant a lot to me. I did it a lot. And much like yourself, I probably would have taken the excuse to leave campus, right? And go drink.
Yeah. I laugh just because I know the insanity, right?
I got
That's
you.
like you laugh, right? It's like in early recovery, I didn't understand that.
How we could laugh?
Yeah, I didn't. I looked at Blue Minis and they were laughing. I'm like,
yeah.
Well, how are you guys having so much fun?
Yeah, it's so stupid too, hey?
Well, now I look back. Now it's like even when I talk to kids at schools, sometimes I giggle. And I'll explain to them. I'm like, if I laughed, it's because about me actually thinking about how insane that was.
Totally. Right? Yeah.
A lot of it is I can't control my facial features as well, right? Which is another big limitation for my life.
Yeah.
Because of my brain injury and being almost murdered, I have a really difficult time smiling. I really have a difficult time laughing. Like not that I can't laugh. I laugh wrong time.
Oh, sometimes I got you.
I laugh at the wrong time. I smile. I look mean. Which affects everything around me, right?
It sure would, man, because it's hard to tell, right? People wouldn't.
It's been hard with my wife.
Has it?
Oh yeah. I'm very grateful that she's been willing to deal with my limitations.
She seems pretty awesome though. Like you guys seem pretty awesome.
I got lucky.
Man, I think you both lucked out actually. Yeah.
I think her more than me though. But
well, I mean, I guess time will tell, but time will tell. She
grateful.
seems pretty awesome, man. You guys, and you guys are both awesome. So
we own a home now. We both have cars.
Yeah.
Life has just changed, right? I know there's material, but like the fact that I can pay taxes, the fact that I live correctly, right?
Yeah.
I was told that I would never drive again.
My
doctor, he signed a statement saying I'll never drive again.
Yeah.
I got the help from the Schumer, the car program at Schumer Hospital.
Yeah.
Community accessible resource. And they helped me get my license back. I did virtual training. So I got that back, right? But that was all thanks to asking for help.
Yeah. That's incredible that you were able to get your license back. So how did they do that? Like, is there a program you apply for through?
The car program, community accessible resource. I did
Okay.
virtual driver training,
Okay.
and then I went and did I got I think it was like my license was flagged at first,
Yeah.
just to make sure that I'm up to par, and then
Mhm.
finally got it thrown out, like just my license now.
Yeah. Dude, that's
Uh,
awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
man.
everything, right? Like walking, talking. I'm still involved
Yeah.
with therapies that
Mhm.
I'll be involved with for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah. Well, I
I still,
mean, do you find that your life is just better because you do treat it, like you do take care of it,
it
right?
is, it can be better. It can be better if I did
Yeah.
more physical, right? I
Okay.
still have quite a bit of physical pain.
Hmm.
That's light though. I think a lot of it won't go away because my doctor told me your back is just is grinding because of the way you walk.
Yeah.
And eventually it's gonna get worse and worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
And that's life. I have to be
Yeah.
very careful with any medication I do take, right? Because I have
Hmm.
to remember my recovery.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's that's a tight line to walk, right? Trying to make sure you take your medication so that you don't overdo it, right?
Oh yeah,
Because it can be overdone really easily if we're
oh yeah.
not paying attention. Yeah.
I know. For me, I could get pretty extreme
Hmm.
narcotic medication for
Yeah.
my pain. I don't go there. I
Yeah.
just I T3s, T4s are the max for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for with my addiction, they don't really work.
Yeah.
I was such an addict, right?
Hmm.
That's life.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
mean,
life
it does.
that
It
I've
takes
done.
on a different. It's a different animal, right? When you're trying to make sure that you don't overdo it with every pill you take, right? Like,
Especially when you have the recovery mind.
mhm,
Because then you think about it, like, did I need that?
yeah.
Was
And
that
then,
was that wrong? And then you start to play tricks on yourself,
yeah,
right? But again, see that alone, see, I'm grateful now. I know that's the disease
hmm,
trying to pull me back.
yeah. It's always messing with our brain, right? Like, yeah.
I'm over 8 years, 8.5 years.
Congrats.
Yeah, and but I still fight it.
Hmm.
But it's sneaky now, right? It's
Yeah.
no people sticking in their arm. It's
Yeah.
eventually that's where it would go, right?
Yep.
But it's yeah, maybe it'll be different this time. And then
Hmm.
sadly, still as a parent,
Yeah.
right? It still peeks its ugly head around the corner and says, you know
Hmm.
what? Maybe it'll be different next time. Until
Yeah.
I just snap myself out of it, right?
Yeah.
I've gone, I make phone calls. I think a lot of time I just call people I know that I need help,
Hmm.
which I don't think there's a short list in recovery.
Mm-mm.
People need help. There's always help out there
Well,
that
and
people
that
need.
that's one of the most valuable things about this, us doing the podcast and continuing to do them, even though now we're doing them via Zoom. Because Darcy's in Lethbridge now, but we're able to reach more people actually by doing it by Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So, because there's going to be a couple of people that I'm able to connect with over the next couple of weeks from where I'm from, California. I've got a friend of mine who actually is in recovery, and he's going to be coming on the program from somewhere in Tennessee or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing what we can do, man, because your story, like being able to share all these different stories around, we have people who listen and watch from like overseas. There's people who watch from, we have, I think, Russian viewers, we have Irish viewers,
Wow.
um, Croatian. I don't know anyone personally in Russia or Croatia, but apparently we have some listeners over there.
Okay.
Um, so I mean, this is why we want to do this, is because I know there's people that will hear your story, right, and be like, oh shit, like that. There might be something for me, right? They might be thinking they can maybe get some help too.
You know what the thing is, I want people to know, David, is no matter how far bad things get,
Mm,
it wasn't until I was 33 years old that I was able to turn around.
yeah.
It wasn't until 35 that I had a job.
Hmm.
Like,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, and
That puts it in perspective, Mitch, right? Like That puts it in perspective, man, because you've come a long way, man, for having your first job at 35, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible, man.
but I've been nothing but lucky, right? The thing is,
Well, lucky means you prepared as well.
I think what God's done for me,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
and like I said to you, I'm not religious.
Yeah.
I do believe in God. I believe that there's something bigger than me. You
Hmm.
know, and it purely helps me, right? I go to church
Yeah.
regularly with my wife, right?
Hmm.
I like that the idea of church. I enjoy it, right? And
Yeah.
plus, my son and my daughter, I want them with
Hmm.
that close connection, so that they can make friendships there that are
Hmm.
healthy for
Yeah,
their
there's
for the.
something to be said about the fellowship of a church too, right? Like
Oh
much,
yeah,
yeah, much
yeah,
like our the 12-step programs and stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of people for a long time have found such solitude, like not solitude, solace with that fellowship of like-minded people, right? Who believe in that power greater than themselves and whatever they call it, it still gathers us together, right?
yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, it's like no matter what, success is possible.
Hmm.
Like, and that's the biggest thing I want people to understand.
Hmm.
Like it's everybody's story is a bit different,
Hmm.
but the feelings are not different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
selfish and self-centeredness, the guilt, the shame, the remorse. It
The
doesn't change.
hopelessness. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the same feelings ran to the lady who had her kids taken away.
Hmm.
To me, sitting in Drumheller in
Yeah.
8 cell, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't change, right?
Yeah, those feelings are so consistent, man, like across so many spectrums of people, right? Like, yeah, it's so consistent. Well, do you have any more you want to share? Because I tell you what, I'd like to finish it on whatever you want to say, man.
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
I like, life's amazing. Like
Hmm.
I'm grateful. Biggest thing is the fact that I have a family.
Yeah.
You know, my job.
Hmm.
The fact that I get to share with kids daily.
Yeah.
Hopefully they hear me, right?
Yeah. Well, I know they do because I talk to some of the other classes, right? Like, and my sister just loves you, man. Like, and it's such a small world, right? Because
Yeah.
when she told me Mitch, I knew exactly who it was. I knew it was you, and even though there's a few Mitches that I know in program, but I knew for sure it was you. It's just such a cool small world, man.
Yeah. Totally.
You're making an impact there for sure. You are, right?
That's a gift of recovery.
Yeah, for absolutely.
Like the fact that I have so much back in my life now. The biggest
Mhm.
thing that I got back is the fact that I like me.
Wow,
You know what
that's
I
pre-
mean? Like,
that's pretty big, man.
well, that's something I didn't have for so long, right?
Yeah, I'm
I
still
felt
working
so
on that
empty.
one.
I felt so empty
Yeah,
and lost, right?
yeah.
I still have hard days, but
Hmm.
I have a program to work through it.
Yeah.
I've had natural support around me that will help me no matter what happens.
Hmm. Well, and you've worked hard to build that support and bring it in to exactly what you need, right? And also, I'm sure of this because you are very supportive of other people as well. That when you create that support network, you're also feeding that support back to other people who need it, right?
Well,
Because
the biggest thing.
yeah,
It's like when people said to me, "I'll love you. We'll love you till you can love yourself."
mhm, yeah,
Right? Yeah. I didn't really understand that. I totally do now, though, right?
yeah, it makes a lot of sense because like I still work on loving myself and I've been
Yeah.
around for a
I
long
do too.
time, right? But I do know that every time I go to a meeting of like-minded fellows and ladies, like I know that when I'm in there, I'm getting exactly what I need, right? Like exactly what I need. I've always gotten like some sort of love there, right? Like even if it was just simply that love of being allowed to be there, right? Being able to sit there and just shut my mouth for an hour sometimes, right? Yeah, what a gift.
Totally.
Yeah, man. Well, Mitch, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to, yeah, I don't know how to thank you. So thank you. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate the option to do it. The offer to
Oh,
do it.
absolutely. It's a no-brainer, right? Like the fact that when you approached me the other day, the fact that we hadn't done this before surprised me actually. So, because it just makes sense that we would have this conversation, right? So,
Yeah.
right on, man. Is there anything else you want to share before we?
No, there's nothing else. Can you do me a favor? Can
Sure.
you forward me a link, a copy of this?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as Darcy gets it downloaded onto his computer and have everything's done, we'll send you a copy for sure.
Okay, and then so I'm sure you can cut this part, right?
Yep.
Was that okay?
It was great. Yeah.
Okay.
It was great, man. Thank you so much, Mitch. It was just nice talking to you and
Yeah,
hearing
so
your story is just incredible, man. So yeah, so he'll get it ready to go. So this one will probably come out. I think we're gonna try to get this out by Wednesday.
okay, cool.
Yeah. And so we'll send you a copy of the link as soon as we get it done.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you
Cool,
so
man.
much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mitch.
You have a great night, brother.
Hey, man, you too. Take care.
Voices in Recovery is produced by Freedom's Path Recovery Society, a registered Canadian charity. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider a donation to Freedom's Path Recovery Society. All donations go directly to assisting Freedom's Path in providing their services free of charge and helps us keep the podcast going. We are grateful for any and all donation. The opinions expressed during the podcast are those of the individual and not those of Voices in Recovery or Freedom's Path or any other organization. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast.
This podcast is being recorded on the traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy. This consists of the Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, and the Blackfeet in the U.S. We acknowledge the Stoney Nakoda, which consists of the Bearspaw, Morley, and Chiniki. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina Huardene and the Métis, Inuit, status, and non-status from all of Turtle Island, and those who are visiting. We are all treaty people.